Doubt breeds better decisions, breeds confidence.
It is with great pleasure and excitement I'm going to introduce you, Michael Smets, who's going to give us a speech about some of his recent work, the CEO report that has been only probably introduced at the latest World Economic Forum in Davos in January. So this is actually the first time since that time this is presented to a broader audience. Michael is an associate professor at Said Business School, and you're running tailor-suited also top management programs, working with, of course, leadership, motivation, complexity within organizations, and is, of course, very research-based as well. Michael focuses both on making some really rigorous theoretical work into his research, but also making sure that it has a lot of practical use to come out of whatever is being done. So Michael, I think it's time for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very, very kind words. Thank you to the CFL for inviting me. And there I clearly have to declare that obviously this is not my work. It's the work of a large research team. I've just been the lucky one who was picked to go to Copenhagen on a lovely spring day and enjoy the sunshine. And with that, I also have to extend very great thanks to you here and those watching from afar in Jutland that you've chosen to come here tonight. I am competing, I am aware, with a sunny evening outside. I've just been informed with the Champions League quarterfinal and the main course, so no pressure at all. As Belinda said, what I'm going to share with you is the CEO report, which was launched at the World Economic Forum in Davos through a panel hosted by Matthew Bishop of The Economist. It included Eileen Gordon of Ingredion, Arne Sorensen of Marriott, and Klaus Kleinfeld of Alcoa, to give you some sense of the caliber of people that we spoke to in this study. In total, we interviewed over 150 CEOs over the past year. Collectively, they have 880 years of experience as chief executives with an average tenure of 6.5 years. They collectively sign responsible for 5.8 million employees and $1.6 trillion of revenues. So it is a fairly illustrious sample that we interviewed. The report is distinctive in a number of dimensions. It's comprehensive in the way that it is not yet another one of those leadership surveys that focuses on the Western world. The sample, in a relatively balanced fashion, covers North America, Europe, but also the Middle East, Asia Pacific, Africa, Latin America, to give us a global impression of how CEOs lead and how CEOs attain the competence to lead in the current business environment. It also covers a very broad range of industries, from life sciences through industrial manufacturing to consumer goods and professional services. Also, in contrast to some other CEO surveys you may have seen out in the business press, it is a personal interview. So 95% of those conversations we conducted face-to-face in the room with the CEO, the others via video conference or telephone. So it's a very intimate setting in which we could explore and discuss the challenges of leadership today in a very intimate and open fashion, because we had this amount of time, but also and especially because we assured CEOs of their absolute anonymity. And it was quite remarkable to what extent CEOs were able and willing to open up and very candidly discuss the challenges and struggles that they go through in their day-to-day work, and that allowed us to discover concepts such as the power of doubt, which is the headline act, so to speak, for tonight, which I will get to in a moment. Another critical way to deal with that, though, is the headline act of the power of doubt. Personally, to me, one of the biggest surprises within our study, and that's why I put Steve Jobs up there, because it's probably one of the people we don't really think they doubt. Known as a forceful, charismatic leader, but it's actually been disclosed in the legal proceedings of the patent case, Samsung versus Apple, public documents. It's quite a thrilling read, actually, where the chief designer discloses how much doubt Jobs had about the launch of the iPhone, but how he worked through that in a very constructive fashion. So, as surprised as you may be to see Jobs' face up there, as surprised were CEOs when we actually asked them, do you ever doubt yourself? So we asked them, what are the toughest decisions you have to make? We went through the technical process of how they make those decisions, all these kind of pros and cons, those technical things. And then you ask, do you ever doubt yourself? Excuse me? Come again? And then the big surprise happened that 71% of them said yes. And they not only said yes, but they said so in a very emphatic way. They say a certain level of professional doubt should be the quality of any good leader. And in fact, as a message to the other 19, if you don't doubt yourself in a constructive, positive way, you are borderline dangerous for your company. Luckily, there are another 10% who say no, they don't doubt themselves, but then very clearly explain all the mechanisms they use to work through doubt, because there is this stigma to the term of doubt. We don't like to doubt ourselves. That's not something we like to admit. It's something you easily get when you talk under the cover of anonymity. But over time, it crystallized that really to those CEOs, doubt is very much like nerves are to elite athletes. When you can harness them, when you can control them, they give you great sharpness, they give you deeper insight, they allow you to make better decisions. If you lose control of those nerves, you lose control of those doubts, that's a recipe for disaster. So the question is, how do they manage doubt? So we tried to map the landscape on, quite intuitively, there is a scale from things you don't know to things you know. It's essentially an information processing, a data processing issue in the first place. But even when people are quite far over to the situation where they think they have plenty of information, they say still, chasing certainty is futile. And that's a lesson a lot of CEOs had to learn the hard way, that stepping into the role, they were looking for a level of certainty which they had to realize is actually completely unattainable in that role. So you have to find what they call comfort in the discomfort. You have to get comfortable with the discomfort of making decisions in situations of uncertainty. And that's interesting because comfort is an emotion. That's not a cognitive, intellectual, data processing challenge. It's about how you feel. And again, they open up the full spectrum that some people are quite fearless in the face of uncertainty. They think, as the CEO, they have to lead with even greater rigor and energy. I have taken myself out of the second-guessing game. It will drive you crazy. So when there is uncertainty, I drive even harder. On the other side, they say, well, it's never black and white, so there is anxiety. But pointing out this constructive notion of, which in a way almost gives you a bit more clarity. Again, coming back to this notion about the nerves, you need to find a constructive level of doubt. So that means we basically have 4 types of doubt in different situations where you know a lot and you are fearless. You know a lot, but you still feel anxious about it. Or you feel you don't know enough and are anxious or fearless about this. So this landscape now gets populated by different examples. And picking up from the Ripple intelligence, when you don't know and you're anxious about it, a lot of CEOs report that that is really what drives their continuous learning, because they want to broaden their awareness. That is, reading news that don't interest you. Travel broadly, speak to a wide variety of people when you travel, from the taxi driver to the waitress to anybody else. Don't limit yourself to the C-suite. Walk the corridors of your organization, get as broad a level of input as you can to make yourself more aware and move yourself away from that extreme end of not knowing and reduce that anxiety. That's the positive side. If you don't do that, they are very, very aware that you are at risk of paralysis. If you're too anxious because there's not enough information, you just don't make decisions. And that is a situation that you simply cannot be in as a CEO. Some decision has to be made, so you need to move yourself closer to the center of that cross where you face a constructive level of doubt that actually allows you to make more confident decisions. That's a very, very important point. We're not saying CEOs these days are riddled with doubt and constantly second-guessing themselves. They harness doubt to make better decisions and communicate them with greater confidence. So in that sense, doubt breeds confidence. And that confidence also protects you from ill-founded confidence, because you need to have an enormous mindset of openness and learning, because however much a genius you think you are still not a genius. There are other people in the system who know better than you many times. So that's the top right quadrant, when people feel they know a lot, and some CEOs say, actually, when you are very clear about the situation, most likely you've missed something. So don't settle into that conflict, and the key thing is, one of the most important things is have people around you that tell you how wrong you are. So in this quadrant, rather than seeking awareness, CEOs seek challenge. They need to harness the diversity of thought of their organization, and some go as far when they recognize they have this propensity to be overly fearless, even reckless when they're confident in their information, confident in their decision-making. They say, I have something called the devil's advocate panel. There is a group of people in my organization, and their only job is to contradict me. And only when all of us are satisfied that we've covered all the different angles, that is when we move ahead with the decision with a greater level of confidence. Depending on your relationship with your board or with your chairman, that may be a source of challenge. Again, broadening your awareness, talking to a wider variety of people, harnessing that diversity of thought, develops that sense of challenge, builds that confidence, and again, it protects you from this risk of myopia, of this sense of the CEO knows best, and you're getting short-sighted about all the different options, all the different scenarios and possibilities that are actually out there, so you make a decision based on a narrow information base. Use the diversity of thought that prevails in your organization, artificially create doubt, so that your decision is actually based on confidence rather than overconfidence. Now, the others are somewhat more intuitive, and down in the bottom right-hand corner, some people say, well, if I'm still nervous at the point of making the decision, I'm either not ready, I'm hasty, or I'm just hoping. So I try to get to a point where you rely on more accumulated inputs, wisdom, information. Essentially, CEOs seek validation, typically through peer mentoring, benchmarking, events like this. Meeting peers, exchanging experiences, the World Economic Forum, peer mentoring, coaching relationships, CEO associations, any forum in which CEOs can exchange their struggles, their current thinking, their problems in a safe environment. And depending on your relationship again, you may get validation from your board or your chairman if you have more of a mentoring relationship. The critical thing is for you to be very clear about the relationship you have with those different people. You don't want to use the same kind of people or resource for everything and always run to the same person. And especially you don't want to run to the wrong person. Thirdly, you need to be very clear about the kind of culture you have in your organization. Diversity of thought and constructive challenge does not come naturally to a lot of organizations. So the tragic outcome there is you speak to staff, to other people in the organization seeking challenge, and you get false validation because people don't feel comfortable standing up to you, pushing back to you. That comes more natural in some national cultures than others. In some organizations, it's not natural at all. So that is the first role of the CEO then, to be very explicit about the interaction he or she wants to have with the people that provide that, whether they need validation or challenge. And the risk you protect yourself from is this somewhat irrational angst that actually you have a very good basis of information, but you still don't want to make the decision. So they give you the validation, the additional level of confidence and comfort to actually move ahead with it. And lastly then, is the question where the information basis isn't good, but the CEO still feels very comfortable moving ahead, the kind of people who take themselves out of the second-guessing game. Because if you're not careful, you think you're indestructible, that's when the dangers lurk. So the key point is, if you have the propensity to move ahead, even on limited levels of data, You simply need to risk manage and prepare for the fallout, just in case you get it wrong. That is where the people sit who rely a lot on their gut instinct, because what you thought you knew yesterday, what was true yesterday, what your gut tells you is right, might actually no longer be true today. So if you're inclined to make those gut-based decisions, better to have that backup, that safety net, and protect yourself from the CEO hubris, of the sense of the CEO knows best and I'm just pushing this ahead without further consultation. So in sum, power of doubt is part of the humanization of management, the humanization of leadership. It is a positive, constructive force that should be embraced rather than feared. It's not a weakness, it's not a disease, it's a positive force that can be harnessed and leveraged for positive action, for better decision-making. As I said earlier, doubt breeds better decisions, breeds confidence.